Hey ladies and gentlemen, this is Miss Humbert here, and today we're going to be doing Unit 5 Learning Target 10. So we're just going to go through and review the work we did with the quadratic formula. So let's start and see and take a look at what that would look like. First of all, remember that quadratic formula. So get that written down on your paper so you don't have to come to me when you're doing your homework and say, oh, what's the quadratic formula again? You have it on your notes. In fact, you have it on all of your other note sheets as well. So there's no reason to be asking me because you should have this written down in multiple places now. So let's take a look at how we use this. So when we did this, the first thing we did was to assign our A, our B, and our C values. A is always with the squared term, so A is 1, B is 9, and C is always the thing that's just a number. So now we're going to take all of those numbers and plug them into the quadratic formula. So we get opposite of B plus or minus the square root of b squared, well, b squared is going to be 9 of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Now remember, when I'm going through and simplifying this, it's all about being a good calculator user. So you can take this thing right here and you can plug it into the quadratic formula. So you have negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 9 squared minus 4 times 20, which is just going to give you 1 all over 2. So now we're going to split it up to our positive and our negative version. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do negative 9 plus the square root of 1. So in our calculator, we're going to do negative 9 plus the square root of 1, and then you want to hit enter to see what answer is left. When you hit enter, you're going to take that and divide it by 2, and you end up getting 5. I really strongly suggest that you have your calculator out and that you're trying to do this at the same time with me to make sure you're getting the right answer. So we have negative 9 minus the square root of 1 over 2. So you're going to do negative 9 minus the square root of 1, hit enter, then whatever that answer is, divide it by 2, and you get 4. So the answer for that is 5, 4. That's your final answer for the quadratic formula. Let's take a look at number 2. So for number 2, we don't have a b term. A lot of students think that b is going to be negative 32, but that negative 32 doesn't have an x with it. The b term has to have an x with it, so our b is actually 0. So there's our setup for the quadratic formula. So we have x is equal to the opposite of b, which is 0, plus or minus the square root of 0 squared minus 4, a, and then we're going to plug in our c. So all I did was substitute in those letters all over 2a. So then we have 0 plus or minus the square root of 0 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 32, and that's 256 divided by 4. Well, that 0 doesn't really mean anything. That's the same as plus or minus the square root of 256 divided by 4. So I'm going to take and make those two versions. So I'm going to have the positive square root of 256 divided by 4. So I'm going to take square root of 256, hit enter, and then divide it by 4, and that gives me 4. Then I'm going to take the negative square root of 256. I'm going to take that, hit enter, and then divide it by 4, and that's going to give me a negative 4. So my two answers for this one are 4 and negative 4. Next, let's take a look at number 3. So for number 3, we need to assign our A, our B, and our C values. So our A is 2, our B is 5, and our C is negative 3. So now we're ready to plug that in. So I'm going to plug that into the quadratic formula. So I have opposite of B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4A C all over 2A. So now we have negative 5 plus or minus the square root, and we have 5 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 3. So you can punch that all in your calculator. Remember, I do suggest using those parentheses, okay? And you have to be careful about how you type it in your calculator. When you plug all of that in, you end up getting 49, and all of that is going to be divided by 2 times 2, which is 4. So now we're going to split it up into our two versions. So we have negative 5, and now we're going to do plus the square root of 49. And then we're going to take that answer and divide it by 4. So you're going to take negative 5 plus the square root of 49, hit enter, and then divide that by 4, which is 0.5. Then we're going to take negative 5 minus the square root of 49. Then we're going to hit enter and divide it by 4. And that's going to give you a negative 3. So you have for your answers 0.5 or negative 3. Let's take a look at number 4. So before we can do number 4, we have to have 0 on one side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 7 to both sides. So then we get 2x squared minus 3x plus 7 is equal to 0. So now I want to assign my a, my b, and my c values. So a is equal to 2, b is equal to negative 3, and c is equal to 7. So now I want to put that into the quadratic formula. So I end up getting x is equal to, the opposite of b, well since b is negative, it's going to become positive, plus or minus the square root of b squared. Again, when you're squaring a negative number, it's really important to put those negative signs or parentheses around your negative sign. Minus 4, remember 4 comes from the equation a, c, all over 2a. So then you get 3 plus or minus. Now you need to simplify what's underneath that radical. Well, when you do that, you end up with negative 47. Now, we can't have a negative number under the radical. So when we have a negative number, we automatically know that it is no solution. So the answer number 4 is no solution. So that concludes your review of the quadratic formula. Go ahead and show me your note sheet when you're done, and I'll give you a copy of the homework. Thanks for listening.